We decided to do our final about Lake Powell and the water levels. We got our information from a website called lakepowellwaterdata.com, and this website takes a bunch of data where it comes from the inflow, the outflow, the elevation, which is the water level of Lake Powell, and it compiles it all in the last 60 years. So we get 60 years of data from this website that's monitored by the government, and it's pretty accurate. So we feel pretty good about where we got our data from. And we researched this topic because Lake Powell is it's a resource that many people use, and it affects hundreds of thousands of people. And from water skiers to fishermen, that's used for power, many people use Lake Powell. So we wanted to see the reasons why in recent years there's been a drought in Utah and the water levels have been declining. So we wanted to test some of the data from this website and see maybe what are causing it, if any of these causes are correlated, and just get some data and put some tests out for Lake Powell. And this is a time lapse of Lake Powell over 60 years, and it's showing kind of the fluctuations of the water. So you can see the drought years, you can see kind of the heavier rainfall years, and it's kind of cool to see how much variation happens in Lake Powell. So this graph just shows the dramatic change of Lake Powell. This is Lake Powell in 1998, and this was our drought year of 2021. And you can kind of see how severe the differences really are. And this graph shows it over a little over 60 years worth of data. It shows how it's filling up, and then when it's filled up, there you can see the drought years and water years. And this is where we tested a lot of our data, was from here in the last 30 years, because we wanted to get some recent causes of why Lake Powell has been draining. And for our hypothesis tests, we tested a one sample proportion of the difference in inflow and outflow of Lake Powell. So we wanted to see if there were more years where Lake Powell had more inflow than it had outflow. And what we found was that we concluded that there was not enough evidence to suggest that the inflow or outflow of Lake Powell is different from each other. So there really wasn't that much difference. Some years there was more inflow, and some years there was less, but it was about 50%. We tested our percent at 50%. And the next test we tested was our correlation regression between elevation, the water level, and inflow. And this one surprised us, because we thought that the inflow would have a direct correlation with the water levels. So the less inflow in recent years would mean that the lake would drop. But we actually found that there wasn't enough information, and there was no linear correlation between the amount of water going into Lake Powell and the water levels. So what this means for us is that we either didn't have enough evidence to conclude that the inflow is affecting the water levels, or that there's another cause other than inflow that we didn't test that is affecting the elevation of Lake Powell.
All right, so tests concluded. So we ran another test on our inflow-outflow rate. This time we ran a 2-cent t-test on a 5% level of significance. And as you can see, we decided to reject HO, and the results came out to where P was 0.551. So we could not conclude that the inflow rate was less than the outflow rate. The next one we got here is we did a one sample confidence interval of Lake Powell's water elevation or water level, just to kind of get an idea of where the actual average was. And on a 95% confidence interval, we found that it is between 3,642 feet and 3,666 feet. And as you can see here, this is a graph of the inflow and outflow rates compared side by side. If you look at it, they're about even the whole way through. So in conclusion, at least based on our results, we could find no correlation between inflow and its water level, and we couldn't find any difference in rate between the inflow and outflow. So we believe there's more variables involved, and we probably need to get more evidence to actually find the true cause of the drop in water elevation.